All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Strongman Winner Circle podcast, episode 25 with my co-host, Anthony Furman. And today we are discussing the different type of strongman athletes.
Guten Tag, Camby. How you doing? That means hello in German for everyone.
Ooh. Hello to you, Anthony Furman.
So this is a fun one. So we're kind of piggybacking off of our last thing we did with Blake. During the course of it, we talked about like the different type of strongman, consistent, blah blah blah, and we came up with a good idea. We're going to talk about it. So we're gonna talk about our three categories of strongman. We're talking pro level, just well known, of course. This isn't your average person because that could be a lot more categories, right? And so listen along. Let us know what you think, and also find out which one you fall into. So what we have is we have heavy hitters. We have the steady climbers, and we have the kings of consistency. Those are our three categories, and we each kind of have our own opinions, and we kind of came together. So when we're talking heavy hitters, we kind of came to the definition that essentially you can win. You do so well in 2 to 3 events that you can win overall, even though you perform poorly in other events. And that's the definition of a heavy hitter, that you can win based off your 2 or 3 strengths, not place, but win. Then we have our steady climbers. Those are guys that through the years, they just get better and better and better in all facets, right? And then they finally crescendo. And then kings of consistency is a tough one. We're looking at performances in your shows, where your placings are per event over time. So that one right there is a very small group, actually. So this is actually a lot of fun. Which one what should we start with?
Let's start with the steady climbers and kind of give some good examples. Again, we're working off the heavyweight pros, but listening to watching the last Giants live, I was listening to Spencer Remnick, and Spencer has been in the sport for more than 15 years, and he says he just gets better 1% every week. Or even every month, he just gets 1% better and better, and then that's got him to the Giants pro stage. So he's been a kind of a steady climber, and he's not he's of course a good mover, pretty static, but he's not busting out the seams in terms of all the events, but he's consistent across the board.
Yeah, so I think he's a great example, our first example for this, because I've known Spencer a long time, and he has climbed steadily. He finally got this opportunity due to his steadily, ability to climb. And he went there and he did great. I mean, he didn't have a bad event. He had a good event. And I think that's an example of he was in a competition with so many heavy hitters that his consistency in those events kind of not hurt him, but it didn't allow him to, place as highly as he could have with those performances in that group. Another example, you look back, I brought this up. Andrew Clayton was another one. For years he came up, started heavy, he just kept climbing and climbing. Then he finally crescendoed. Of course, he got hurt, which was a terrible, terrible situation. But he was there. He was peaking for it. That's another great example, steady climber.
And then when Clayton upped his deadlift is really when he turned things around.
Yeah, very true. And again, a lot of times that's part of it. It's just your 1 or 2 weaknesses are what you're using to climb, because it's rare that you increase everything at once. I'm going to throw it out. Nick Camby here. He steadily increases deadlift where he got to the point where now I would say he's in the consistency king. But he was a steady climber for a long time until he was able to finally fix all his deficiencies. Now I say he, but I'm talking to you, can perform at that high level consistency. It's just, who else we got? Bishops.
Mm-hmm.
Adam Bishop, steady climber.
Every year he's getting better. Even though he won British Strongest Man and then took second or third to Tom this past year, he still is getting better, and potentially. Too bad he hurt his tricep, right? Because a lot of people were looking forward to his potentially a 505 kilo pull from him and to break the deadlift record, but he looks like he's always getting better. He's always improving his weaknesses. So he's a great example of a steady climber. And then the other one would be like kind of Luke Stoltman, because Luke Stoltman for a while was always kind of in the scene. He was never like really podium. And I think just being a good example to Tom, he kept pushing himself and then started getting the podiums. Won Europe's Strongest Man, took second at this past Europe's Strongest Man, tied for third at the Arnold. So right now he's really being consistent and being consistent in terms of placing in the finals at World's Strongest Man.
Yeah, like we said, a lot of times you can steadily climb until you reach another event. And Luke has climbed. Now he's pretty consistent. I wouldn't call him a king of consistency just because he's not in the podium every time, kind of thing. But he's very consistent strongman. I wouldn't call him a heavy hitter because he has a great press, of course, but like he's not lagging in anything else necessarily.
So those guys, whatever contest kind of shows up, they're always going to be steadily climbing, and then year over year, they're always going to keep doing better. So let's talk about the heavy hitters. So
heavy hitter, baby. Again, ability to win based off performance of, I would say 2 or 3 events. That's our definition.
So a lot of times with the heavy hitters too, it's if those events kind of line up, you can be as consistent as you want, but if those events line up for those heavy hitters, they're going to be going.
It's unstoppable almost. I mean, like, I hate to friggin' say it, but we go back to 2017 World's Strongest Man. Eddie Hall, it was one of the, if not the best presser and deadlifter at the same time. People forget about his axle world record he did that one year. It was freaking amazing. So at one point, he was the best overhead and deadlifter. And, obviously he's a great squatter. And those events, his pressing ability and his static ability in those 2 to 3 events that were static were enough to catapult him to the championship. And that's what we talk about with the heavy hitter, the ability to take your 2 to 3 best events and just win based off that. And that's what Eddie was in my opinion.
So he won the deadlift, won the press, won the squat. He took like 5th on the tires, and then he took, I think he did pretty like 2nd on the stones.
He's surprising. A lot of guys that year gassed out on the stones. It was kind of weird. But he was always pretty good at the stones. He wasn't bad on the stones, but it was never an event where like, Eddie, king of the stones type thing. Whereas Eddie squat, press, deadlift. I mean,
and then other examples. So we have Mr. Tom Stolman, the current 2-time World's Strongest Man, on there as well.
He's a tough one because like when you talk about heavy hitter, I would say, what are his heavy hitter events?
So Stones.
Yeah, Stones
is. But now we have to say Atlas Stones because he's lost to Martins when it comes to more shouldering and natural stones.
People love to forget that Martins is another king of the stones. Atlas Stones. I'll say Tom, though, Atlas Stone wise, I don't think anybody's going to touch him unless he lets him.
But for Tom, we've seen a lot. Of course, we see the great performances at Britain's Strongest Man. He had a great run at the Rogue Invitational. Of course, the 2 World's Strongest Man runs. But besides that, there's times where he'll go to a contest. He might place 7th or 8th, even in an event or overall. So he's really not consistent.
And for everybody, this isn't trashing Tom. This is stating facts that he doesn't put the effort sometimes into certain events, which is fine. That's his right to do. He has the ones in his mind that are his go-to events, which you should. But it's just facts. Sometimes he's not consistent, and that's what it is. It doesn't matter the reason. It just happens.
But now, do we think it's more kind of more mental? There's certain ones that he holds true, and that's the ones he works hard for, and the other ones he shows up.
I think from what I've seen, we all know at this point, he does have the autistic background, right? And what we know is a lot of times it's easy to get tunnel focused. You get the blinders on. I think that happens with Tom sometimes is when he doesn't perform well, that's all he sees, and it affects him a little bit down the road. So that's my take on it. Is just he just keep competing. As you notice, the more he's competed, the better he's got at dealing with anything the outside influences. So I think if he continues to compete, which he looks like he's going to, he can get to the level where he's just a king of consistency.
And then our 3rd example, we have the American Evan Singleton. And I think he kind of fits right in there too. If there's a yoke, stones, he always does really well. Just needs to get that shoulder fixed, and he probably would have been a consistent king.
Yeah, I would say, if there's ever a grip, which there was always a grip, whether it's farmers or a hold, that's a dangerous event for him. He's gonna be fighting for the win on that. Yoke. He's just so fast in any yoke or frame or sandbags, any moving event right there. That's his shit. And it's, again, he doesn't have the prettiest deadlift, but he is 1,000-pound puller in competition, which is a rare thing. So I would consider that a heavy hitter event for him, even though for reps, he doesn't always quite do as well.
What do you take this past Giants live? You took 3rd in the deadlift?
Yeah, he took 3rd. He took 3rd. And again, it was I remember he bullied 4 reps, and then that 5th one just at the knees. He just,
Mhm. But really quickly, not to get off track, but he made. I thought he was gonna grab that. He made like just a face right before, like he got trying to get the crowd going. I was like, I was really pushing for him to get that 5th rep.
Evan, if you're watching, you need to learn how to hitch. That's what it is. I mean, he doesn't know how to hitch, and when he went to hitch, it pulled him forward.
It was over his knees. So we gotta get Poundstone in his head or something.
And then I would say back in the day, a heavy hitter was Rob with the overhead. And he was good overhead and yoke, where it's 2 good events where that propelled him to win in Africa or Australia that year at the Arnolds. Of course, he's taken a little bit of a hit on his overhead when it comes to like log and axle, but you saw with the dumbbell, that was one of the best in the world still. It was awesome. Mm-hmm. Heavy hitters, again, we define this as ability to win, not just having a good event, because you do have your guys like the Robert Oberst, who came on the scene with a great overhead in 2012, I think was when he said it, or somewhere. And that was kind of the end of the story, right? So like,
and then just stayed at that level and teetered. And
so you have heavy hitters that have that great event that they don't do anything with it too. But we're not talking about them. We're talking about the ones that win. Because this is the Strongman Winner Circle podcast.
It sure is. All right, tell us about the consistent kings.
The kings. There's only 2. I'm sorry, everyone else. Martins Litzis and Alexei Novikov. That's all I got. And to me, you look at their body of work over the past. Thor back in the day. We did talk about Thor.
Yeah. And we said Matthews to a point, right?
Yeah, it's just the only reason I can't throw Matthews in here is because he doesn't win.
Yes.
It's tough. I hate it. And he's not a heavy hitter because he doesn't win. And he's not a steady climber because he's already up there. So it's like, he's a tough one. He's an anomaly.
But Oleski, as you guys can see, he shows up at every contest and podiums. Man, third at least.
It's a pleasure to watch most of the time. Like, it's just, I remember his 2019 was when he burst on the scene that year, and he won like 3 Arnolds. And it's just, watching him compete in person, it's just like, how and why. But it doesn't matter. He just does it. And it's phenomenal watch. It's very similar to Martins. These 2, I don't think have an event. Martins with Stones, I mean, he's up there. But I don't think they have a signature event. Trying to think. I mean, dumbbell. Alexei with the dumbbell.
Yeah, but Oleski just third at minimum. Even we said for each contest, but even per event, he's no less than. You
don't find him placing first in an event and then 9th in another event. You're not going to find that, him or Martins. That's just not a thing unless something happens, out of their hands or whatever. And that's how you become a king of consistency, is placing top 5 at all times.
So that's what we have him there. But we wanted to discuss the different type of strongman so you guys can relate to see kind of where you potentially might fall into. And so you can kind of adjust your schedule, your training, and how you can potentially figure out what's going to work best for you within your strongman season.
Right. So you look at, when I look at this, I see 3 distinct kind of phases. I see the consistent kings are, I equate them to like NFL players. They have a season that they know they have to perform in, and they prepare for that season so that they can complete that season at the highest level from the beginning to end. And that's what they do. That's exactly what they do. The heavy hitters don't do that. So they model their training. They pick their shows a little better. You have for example, Tom, he picks what shows he puts his effort into. And that's generally what the heavy hitters do, because they're not consistent. They for what, whether it's training maturity, age maturity, or whatever it is, they don't have the time to have that kind of system where they break down their year by season, off season, preseason, in season training. Which
let's look at, like, let's say this year alone. I think Tom is training for his 4th contest now. He's done. He won Britain's Strongest Man. He did okay at the Arnold Classic. He won World's Strongest Man, and now he's training for the Shaw Classic.
Yep.
And then the Rogue Invitational potentially. I don't think there's been too much.
And I'm sure he'll do Europe's or whatever.
Well, Europe's already happened this year. That was in April. That's Oleski one over Luke.
Oh yeah. You're right.
But so Tom, it looks like Brandon Strongest Man is really important for him.
Yeah.
The Arnold. Man. It was a week after British Strongest Man, so he picked one over the other, and then you have World's Strongest Man, super important for him. He's of course 3 podiums there across, also his 2 wins, and then you also have something like the Shaw Classic. Now he has a little more time leading into it, but he's planning out, he's spacing out the different big contests that he wants to do, rather than kind of being able to kind of jump in and doing well at every contest.
You know, I think if the money wasn't there, he wouldn't even do the Arnold. That's my opinion. You know, again, that's my opinion. I just think he doesn't elevate it. It's tough. Like World's Strongest Man, Tom Stoltman, or Arnold, a classic winner, right? I mean, which one would you want?
It's
tough.
So like it's interesting because the World's Strongest Man title goes farther across for people in the sport and outside the sport.
Yes.
But the Arnold Classic is, when you talk about just strength sports in general, that's a big one for that type of group. So it depends on, again,
so I think it's very smart.
Who you want to impress.
And I think he's choosing the right thing to build a name off of. You build it off World's Strongest Man. That's what you build your name off of, and then you can do what you want. So I think it's smart. But again, it keeps him from being consistent.
Yeah, but it's a smart way, because let's just think about it. If Tom, the heavy hitter, decided to do every big show that came across him, he might be more. He might podium a little more. He might be kind of in the mid pack, and maybe it might not win some of those big shows. He might have more consistent performances across the board of like 6-7 shows, but wouldn't win as many shows if he's doing.
It's hard. It's hard to compete that often. Like I also I think in the coming years, Alexi's going to pull back on the number of shows he does, because he's very young still, and he's still going to start feeling it. You get guys like Jerry Pritchett who would do 10 shows a year for years, and you could see it take a toll on their bodies and their ability to perform. So you do have to be smart, especially when you're a heavy hitter and you're so damn strong. It could get dangerous when you're consistent. For example, consistent 1,000-pound puller. That's some territory that humankind has not been in for a very long time. I mean, that's the unknown. You can hurt yourself.
All right. So Anthony, let's just say you're an amateur heavy hitter in the heavyweight class, and you're looking at the American scene, and you have a few opportunities. What would you do? How would you schedule your year?
I'm an amateur in the United States. I'm basing my year around OSG heavyweight, because that's how you get into Giants Live. That's how you get into Worlds.
So
I think that's and once you're there, you can get invites to Arnold, to Rogue Invitational. You know what I mean? Like the Worlds opens up doors that the others don't open for you.
So if we would have to suggest, we would have, like, for instance, you would put that 12, like a lot of times you have like your best show of the year, and then you have some other shows that you do just to kind of for building and experience and become a better athlete. So as an amateur, if you do a 12-week prep, you would do a 12-week prep for that for OSG, and then you would potentially jump into local shows or regional shows if you experience and potentially different skill sets.
If I'm an amateur heavyweight, my whole season, my whole year is based off OSG. Now I'm not necessarily doing prep work for OSG the whole year, but it's in the back of my mind when I'm programming, when I'm training, because you kind of know the style of events with OSG, kind of the flow of it. So that's in the back of my mind. I mean, that's going to be the main goal, all my programming, even though I'm training for other stuff, like that's in the back of my head, that other stuff is for this ultimate goal.
So if you're a steady climber, an amateur steady climber, would you be doing US Nationals, Strongman Corporation Nationals, hopping into a class show, hopping in overseas? Would you just be doing all of them just to kind of keep consistently?
I think if you're climbing, there's nothing off the table for you. You don't have to be smart about what you do, because you're gonna get better every time you do it. So as you're climbing, get out there. Don't narrow yourself down to one thing. There's so much opportunity. You never know. You might do all 5 federations we just listed, and only one of them gave you the opportunity you wanted. But you wouldn't have known that if you wouldn't have done them all. If you would have picked one, you never would have known about the other opportunities. So do them all.
Do them all here, and then consistent kings. Be at all the big contests. I think that's the way to go. So of course, you're seeing for the heavyweights, you're going to be at the World's Strongest Man, Arnold Classic, Shaw Classic, Rogue Invitational, World Ultimate Strongman. Potentially, we haven't heard too much this year if they're going to have another show this fall, but Ultimate's kind of the other Ultimate is SCL. But anyway, at least those 4 or 5, plus all the Giants live shows.
My advice for heavyweights out there that are frustrated and looking to get out there: message these people, message the SCL directors, email Ultimate Strongman. The answer is always no until you ask. End of story.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's always, just in general, always important to do really well and get yourself out there in front of different crowds and different promoters, because you might impress the right guy and they might invite you to the show.
ASM 2017, Gerhard was a judge and really appreciated my performance, and that got me the invite to the Arnold South Africa eventually. You know, you never freaking know, man. It's crazy.
I had to turn down an invite to go do a contest with Zadrunas this past July because I'm still recovering from my back. But it just
was it the log lift championships he does?
I'm not sure. I think it was a contest in Lithuania. I didn't get too much into it just because the timing, and just I'm still recovering. I probably might have been able to do something, but it's not worth it.
This is a man that knows what he's got to do right here. That you guys are looking. That's a tough choice to make right there. And so everyone give Camby a clap for making that choice for his body.
This show's not about patting myself on the back, but okay. All right.
Oh man. So I mean, essentially that's all I got. Again, you know, I just think it's a fun little episode to kind of just see where you're at. Where do you fall in line with this?
So take those suggestions, put it to work, but ultimately work hard and try to learn from everyone and everything. So
that's it.
If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, notification bell, follow on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Yep.
And if you guys want us to talk about more topics, comment below or DM us, and we'll be happy to talk about.
Also, don't be afraid to listen to this in front of your parents. I know moms love me, so I'm just saying they'll probably like the show.
Yes, sir. But guys, thanks for listening, and for next time, stay strong.